All right, parents, here we go again. It's the Ask Dr. Tony episode. This is the Experience Miracles podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, an expert in pediatrics, neurodevelopmental disorders, and drug-free, nervous system-focused healthcare. On this weekly episode, I'll be addressing the top questions on every parent's mind. If there's one thing we love and welcome, it's parents who never stop learning, asking the hard questions, and advocating for your kiddos like none other. So get ready for some real talk, real-life clinical and parenting experience, and real easy to understand answers that will help your family take action and get to that next level of health and healing. You ask, I answer. Let's dive into today's episode. Okay, parents, here we go. We got another Ask Dr. Tony show. Without a doubt, one of the top kind of categories of questions we get are all around gut health and the gut-brain connection and the microbiome. And it's such a very, very top of mind, conversation and question and area for parents to dive deep in. And there's some really good reasons for it. And I want to rip through those first. You're going to be blown away by this conversation. You're going to be blown away by how much simpler getting the gut healthier and functioning better is than I think a lot of times we've been led to think it is. And we've been told, all these diet changes, all these detoxes, all these supplements, all these herbs, all these things, like in the best of ways, we're in this absolute, explosion, this time of absolute explosion of functional medicine, integrated medicine, biomedical care. And so that's one of the reasons that this is such a top of mind conversation. And so I went back and just did a little inside the practice study to lead into this Ask Dr. Tony show and really kind of answer this range of questions about, hey, we've literally done everything from traditional medicine. We've tried the Miralax. We tried all those other sort of things, got nowhere. Then we went full send into functional medicine and we did the GI mapping. We did the stool testing, all the different forms of them. I know there's different brands, different companies, different doctors, different providers like different ones, but we're going to aggregate the gut stool sample, functional medicine, GI map, candida, poor enzymes, leaky gut. We don't have enough good bacteria. We've got too much bad bacteria. We're going to aggregate that entire conversation here. And what I found is that in the last couple, I think I ended up looking at 50 to 60 different intake paperworks where the child coming into our clinic, and again, if you guys listen to the podcast on the regular, you know that we do not work off of a diagnosis. We are not at all even close to traditional medicine where it's like, oh, we got to get this kid a diagnosis. We got to label them and then we got to treat it. No. Each kid gets a very individualized, customized care plan where we look at the root cause neurophysiological dysfunctions and we address that no matter what the diagnosis, whether they have one or not. But to fit the frame of the conversation, if you're in the autism world, especially, and if you're in the ADHD world, so that's what I did. I took our last 50 to 60, kind of sets of intake paperwork that fit autism, ADHD, and this neurosensory sort of conversation. And I looked at, on our paperwork, we ask parents the top 3 goals they have for their kiddo. Now, when you're in the autism and ADHD world, it's usually calm down their sensory, the other goals, the most common goals are calm them down, have less stemming, less stress, less meltdowns, less reactions, get them communicating. So a lot of the goals are very much to do with the signs and symptoms, the struggles that show up each day with autism and ADHD in that kind of behavioral neurosensory category. But 60% of our intake forms for kids with autism, ADHD, and neurological conditions nowadays, parents who are so smart, so brilliant, and so cutting edge, aka all of you, will write somewhere in that top 3 of goals, fix gut health, improve gut, improve the gut-brain connection. The word gut, those 3 letters, G-U-T, has shown up into our paperwork as a goal within the realm of ADHD, autism, and really just in the realm of chronic illness altogether. And so I know this is a question. These are answers and explanations you as parents are looking for throughout all different kind of fashions of kids being sick and struggling, but especially in the neurosensory world. And the other reason that it has really come to the forefront is just this sequential journey we are all on as parents, where when our kiddo is struggling with neurological stuff and gut stuff and immune system stuff and inflammatory conditions and chronic illness, the first place we go for answers doesn't give us really any traditional medicine, right? So a lot of families wind up in functional medicine, integrated medicine, the biomedical world, because traditional Western medicine failed them. And so what they do is it feels like on the surface that you're leaving the medical world entirely when you go holistic, when you go natural, when you go drug-free. But what we're going to do in this conversation, and we'll do in another episode where I'm going to really get into the conversation of how deep do supplements really go? Do supplements provide that deep, really reset, restore, rebuild health restoration concept or not? So we're going to do a whole conversation and a whole deep dive episode here coming up pretty soon all about supplements and really just get into that conversation. But a lot of times I think parents feel like, oh my goodness, here we go. We are getting entirely out of the traditional world and we're getting into root cause healing. Now, when you get there and you get into the functional and integrative world, you hear all about the gut. You hear all about two different connections with the gut. Number one, you've probably been told 60, 70, 80% of our immune system, your child's immune system is in the gut. So if your child gets sick too often, if they are too inflamed and they have chronic illness in that way, you need to get the gut better to get their immune system better. That is absolutely, positively, neurophysiologically accurate. It's just an incomplete conversation. Stay tuned. You've probably also heard when learning all about the gut that there is a gut-brain connection, hence bringing it into the world of ADHD, autism, seizures, and so forth, where we kind of just think, oh, the brain, nervous system, brain, neurological challenges. Well, the brain isn't the only part of the nervous system. Turns out the nervous system is everywhere, spread throughout the body, just controlling and coordinating every other system of the body, including the gut and the immune system, and every other cell and tissue of the body as well. The nervous system is not relegated just to the brain. The nervous system doesn't just control the gut and the gut-brain connection. The nervous system controls the immune system and inflammatory modulation. And while there absolutely is a massive interplay between the gut and the immune system and inflammation, and there's a massive interplay from the bottom up, from the gut up to the brain, first and foremost, there is a massive foundational, even more important connection from the nervous system to the gut and to the immune system, and actually every other system too. We could talk about the sensory motor system, we could talk about hormones and the endocrine system, but today we're talking all about the gut. Now, before I get into how findings on the GI map testing can be improved, not just through diet change, not through just through supplements and binders and detoxers and spending thousands of dollars in that world, which is my favorite, awesome, incredible, healing, transformative world, as long as the deepest foundational issues of nervous system dysfunction are handled first. We're going to get real nerdy with the gut-brain connection and real nerdy with the gut-nervous system connection. But first, I just want to set a story that was a real-life clinical experience for me as a practitioner that I think very much parallels with the story where a lot of you as families still are feeling stuck. So when I first got into this work chiropractically, I knew all about birth trauma. I knew all about subluxation, vagus nerve dysfunction. I knew all about the sensory motor control that is really housed in the neurospinal system and the brain-body connection. And I knew that we could create such massive change and improvement in kids with autism and ADHD and chronic illness with chiropractic alone. But I was also just absolutely obsessed with learning anything and everything I could about how to get kids better as well. So I went to the Defeat Autism Now conferences, which is now MAPS, and I was one of the very first people in this massive movement of the biomedical, functional, integrative world. And I am a relentless, obsessive learner. When I say I sat front row, I mean I sat front row. I didn't just take every seminar and every certification. I went and I shadowed all these doctors. I traveled to Wisconsin to see a great doctor there. I traveled down to the south suburbs of Chicago to see a great doctor there. I traveled out east and went to a couple offices and shadowed doctors who were biomedical pioneers. I went out to Idaho and shadowed some doctors who were functional medicine and functional neurological pioneers. So I went all in, much like so many of you parents feel like, oh my gosh, this is a rabbit hole that we have literally dove headfirst in. I went that far, full steam, full send in like you did as well. And I, just like you bring it all the way back into your family and you're like, we got to get that GI map. We got to get the stool sample. We got to find out about heavy metals. We got to find out about these bacteria. We got to find if we got a leaky gut. We got to find if it's MTHFR. We got to find if it's COMP. We got to find if there's parasites in there. So just like you feel like you need to go out and get every single test and stool sample and hair sample and whatnot on your child from a functional medicine, no matter how many thousands of dollars and no matter where you need to travel and do or what lab you need to connect to or what telemedicine clinic you need to get connected to, just like you feel compelled to go that far down this gut brain, gut immune system world, so did I. I literally spent hundreds of thousands of dollars completely changing, what would be a catch-all word for this, the model of my practice. And we handed out the GI maps and the stool samples. We did hair samples and sent them to the lab. We did deep dive, oh my goodness, so many vials of blood. We actually had this set up in our office once a week. So I, as a practitioner, still stuck to the chiropractic part, the nervous system part that we're going to get into here. And I still stayed, if you will, within the clinic in my lane, but we built this multi-integrated center at our old location. And I brought in a functional neurologist and I brought in biomedical specialists and I brought in all these, I even did vision therapy. We worked on primitive reflexes and craniosacral and neurointegrative vestibular therapy, balance work. We were in the functional neurology world too. And I'm telling you this story, I've kind of alluded to it a few times, but I haven't gone this deep into the gut and GI map testing results like I will in this episode. And we ran all of these stool samples and all of these different labs on our kids as well. And just like, in a really good way, in a really synonymous way, just like I can now take a case history of a child, say with autism spectrum disorder, and once I get the details on their perfect storm case history, if I find out if they had a stressful pregnancy, if they had a cord wrapped vacuum extraction or emergency C-section, if they were colicky, if they were constipated, if I really map out their very specific behaviors and challenges, when I take a really deep case history on a patient, I could take our inside scans, which are measuring nervous system dysfunction, dysregulation, vagus nerve damage. I could take out a set of markers or colored pencils from my 10-year-old's backpack, and I could literally draw the scan patterns with almost probably 80 to 90% accuracy, because once you take a case history, you pick up on the patterns of symptomatology. Now, the patterns of symptomatology are what the body is expressing outwardly negatively that we don't want. So let's call that symptomatology. Now, on the inside, our job as doctors who actually get to the root cause is to find the root cause dysfunction within, in my work, the nervous system and then all the different systems that it controls that would spit out that unwanted symptomatology, right? Those challenges. So that's coming from the outside. So those are clues. Those are what we call patterns to help us figure out what's not working appropriately on the inside. And I can do that with scans. And I'm coming all the way around the horn here to tell you that after running about 1 to 2 years of GI map and functional med testing in my clinic, it's just the way God gave me my brain. I could begin to predict the exact lab results. So pretty soon, almost every single lab for our kids with autism and ADHD and neurological challenges came back looking pretty much the same. Now, did it look exactly the same? No, but for this podcast, I want to aggregate it together. Of course, we had massive issues with Candida and the beneficial bacteria that we needed. Like the good guys were always low. They were always shut down. They were suppressed. What about the bad guys? Yeah, just like you'd think, all sorts of overgrowth of different bacteria and different bad guys that we didn't want it. Different amino acids, different proteins, different kind of building blocks of good health, very low. Enzyme challenges, every time. Leaky gut, every time. Suspected gut-brain barrier and the wall not being very healthy and all sorts of permeability all the time. I could go through here on this podcast and tell you exactly what most of your kids' labs looked like without looking at their labs but instead just looking at their case history, what caused that stress and dysfunction on their neurophysiological system. And then most importantly, I could look and assess their nervous system, and I could match their nervous system dysfunction patterns to their GI map and gut dysbiosis dysfunction findings or patterns as well. And then we could match all that together to their symptoms. Now I'm going really slow through this one. This is some of the nerdiest stuff we could ever teach, because diving deep into the gut and GI mapping and functional med, it takes quite a brain. It takes quite a bit of bandwidth. And then diving deep into the nervous system and really understanding subluxation, dysregulation, dysfunction, vagus nerve damage, and the patterns that that presents with is pretty nerdy as well. But I know my audience, you guys are brilliant. You've been down all these roads. You've had the majority of these tests, or you're thinking about getting it. So I just want to speak all the way down into the granular details. So here's what happened in our clinic. Oh my goodness, I should have looked it up before turning the mic on to record this one. I don't remember how long ago, but I had, let's call it an internal theory. I started to put two and two together where I could see every time my inside scans, which would show this root, really, really deep dysfunction and dysregulation within the nervous system. So sympathetic dominance, we would find that the sympathetic nervous system was just stuck on overdrive, and we would find that the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic system, which really controls gut, motility, absorption, elimination, which I'm going to break down next, how we stimulate it and get it working without diet changes, detoxes, and thousands of dollars of supplements. I would look at these patterns. So I would have my scans here, if you will. I know it's a podcast, so you can't see me, but I'd have my scans here on the left, right? So I would look at those. I'm old, so this is back when we printed everything out. Sorry, Trees, okay? Now it would be like 2 iPads. So I'd have my scan findings here on the left. So actually, let me go in order. I'd have the child's case history. I'd know exactly what perfect storm triggers they went through. I'd know exactly what symptoms and challenges and kind of conditions and diagnoses they've had. Then in the middle, I would have my inside scans, so my thermal, my EMG, and my HRV. And then over here, I would have their labs. I'd have their GI map testing, stool samples, findings, lab work, blood work. We drew it all. We did it all. And I would look at all of these. And I was looking for what's called, in our nerd world, clinical correlations and pattern recognition. And so what I started to figure out, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And once I get all the way through this, you're going to see like, oh my goodness, that's actually not that complex. There's a lot of kind of complexity in the middle, but I promise we'll get to the far side here and we'll make it really, really simple. So when I would look at the case histories and their perfect storm, and then I would look at their scans and their nervous system dysfunction, sympathetic dominance, vagus nerve dysfunction, and then look at the stool samples, it really just showed me that the last thing there, the GI map and the gut dysfunction, was coming from nervous system dysfunction and subluxation first and foremost. What had happened sequentially within the child's case history and what was happening neurophysiologically within their body is that this root foundational nervous system dysfunction was messing with the gut, suppressing it and creating such a level of specific gut dysfunction that's why the bad bacteria were allowed to overgrow, the yeast and so forth. That's why the good bacteria were getting used up. That's why the heavy metals and the toxins couldn't get out. And so what I theorized was, I wonder if I can change these stool sample GI map findings without diet changes and without supplements and binders and chelators and so forth. And so what I set out to do is I did my own study inside our clinic for about 6 months. And as I always have and always will be in the entire history of my practice, I was very honest with families because they paid for that GI map testing. They sat down with our functional nutritionist and our functional med expert that would come into the clinic once a week. And then I would do a report with them as kind of the chief clinical officer of all this, if you will. And I would sit down and I would explain to them what I'm doing my very best to explain on this podcast. And I would say, A is causing B. So it may look like on these labs, and we can neurophysiologically correlate a lot of these findings on the labs to certain behaviors and challenges your kiddo is going through, but there's something even deeper foundationally that we must fix first. And my clinical theory was that if we fixed that fully, entirely through the nervous system, the labs would get better, quote unquote, on their own. Now, it's not really on their own, right? Chiropractic nervous system care was going to come in, restore function to the foundational system, to the nervous system, and then the labs would get better. And so what I really just asked this, what would you call this? This phase, this season of parents to do is to really trust the science and trust my understanding of it at that time. And 6 months later, we would do a 6-month care plan. Usually that would be about 60 to 72 chiropractic visits in between. Some cases a little more if their child was more severe. Some cases a little less if their child was more mild. So over the course of 6 months, we would do 60, 70, 80, sometimes 90 to 100 neurologically focused chiropractic adjustments. Those adjustments are designed to decrease sympathetic tone, get your child's nervous system out of sympathetic dominance, and restore, reactivate, and rebuild vagus nerve tone and parasympathetic function. I'm going to break that down as it relates to the gut next before we're done. And then I re-ran these labs. And because I was so committed to finding these results, again, my office manager at the time didn't think this was the best plan, but I loved it because I just needed to know what was going to get these kids better or not. I paid for the subsequent test after. We just took the cost of that on, and we paid for the kit, we paid for the labs, and then we sat down with those parents. And the vast majority of the time, not every time, about 80 to 85% of the cases, their labs, their GI map testing got significantly better with chiropractic adjustments alone. And that was all the neuroscientific, clinically proven proof I needed to now be so confident, so clear, so loud with the conversation that I have on this podcast all the time that says, look, these strep, these bacteria, these candida problems, they're a big problem. Parasites, that's an actual issue. Lack of proper nutrients and enzymes to get the job done, that's a big issue. Leaky gut, that's a big issue. Gut brain, that's true. Gut inflammation, gut immune system dysfunction, that's true. Heavy metals need to get out. But the bigger question, the most important question, the foundational question is, Iowa farmer language from Tony is, why is all that stuff so screwed up, jacked up anyways? Not just, hey, here's the labs. Let's target abnormal physiology with outside in supplemental physiology. Let's target its actual deepest root cause, which is nervous system dysfunction. So here's what we found all the time, that when the nervous system, when that child goes through the perfect storm and they're subluxated and they're sympathetic dominant and the vagus nerve is dysfunctional and they have dysautonomia, it's the vagus nerve that is the literal, actual anatomical brain-gut-gut-brain superhighway. 80% of the vagus nerve fibers go from the gut to the brain. And if a child is stuck in sympathetic overdrive and they have that poor vagal nerve tone parasympathetic function, so that's shut down, they're going to have poor motility. They're going to have increased gut inflammation. They're going to have a weakened gut lining and barrier, and they're going to have leaky gut issues. They're going to have a weak immune system in a pro-inflammatory state. They're going to have toxin buildup. They're going to have strep buildup. The bad guys are going to get stuck in there. The heavy metals are going to get stuck in there. The things we don't want are going to get stuck in there. And the good stuff can't get in there. So that's going to lead to all sorts of inflammation, sensory overload, and behavior challenges. Because I taught this once on the podcast, and it's really nerdy, but people really picked up on it. So I wanted to share it one more time on this gut-specific episode. The nervous system, all by itself, without nutrients, without nutrition, without macronutrients, without enzymes, without amino acids, the way the nervous system works is it's actually this sensory neuromotor system through the vagus nerve and through the gut, which actually anatomically, the gut is a muscle. So there's a gut-brain connection that has to do with neuromotor and sensory motor tone and coordination. Almost muscular function is how you can think about it before it becomes diet and nutrition. And so the nervous system controls these 4 primary gut functions in order. Number 1, motility. The nervous system, when in sympathetic dominance, shuts down motility. So this first one is actually about if we just fixed this, oh my goodness, kids' gut health gets better. So the the problem, the reason your child can't detox isn't just MTHFR and quote unquote genetic challenges. It's because their gut is a muscle. The muscle becomes subluxated, which means stuck, which means the peristalsis, which is the movement of the muscle, which is controlled by the parasympathetic vagus nerve system, isn't working due to this subluxation, this interference, and this sympathetic dominance. So the gut literally can't move things along. It can't move bad guys out. Motility is where 80 to 90% of detoxification comes from. It's not about glutathione. It's about taking a crap in the toilet or the diaper if they're little. And so if you have subluxation and sympathetic dominance and vagus nerve dysfunction, you shut down gut motility. And that's the biggest issue from autism to you name it, okay? Number two, the nervous system controls what's called absorption. So the neuro-gut control and coordination has to do with absorption. The nervous system, through these sensory nerve endings, knows those are good nutrients. It can recognize these different cell receptors on different proteins and fats and the things that it needs. And so it will absorb the good stuff when the nervous system is connected. So there needs to be proper nervous system tone, vagal nerve function for absorption to happen, just like motility. Number three on this function chart is assimilation. Once it figures out, oh, that's a good stuff. That's magnesium, that's zinc, that's a protein, that's a building block. I need these things. That's good fat. Get on in here. Assimilation is air traffic control. The nervous system controls where foodstuffs and nutrients go. Hey, you got to go to the liver. Liver's jacked up. We got to get it better. You got to go to the kidneys. You got to go to the muscles. You got to go to the brain. So assimilation is entirely controlled by the nervous system. Nervous system signaling is nervous system function. And number four is elimination. And actually number four is reliant on number one. Elimination is getting rid of the bad stuff. And there's neurochemical signaling that comes with that. But most importantly, it's a physical, bodily, motility-based function. So what happens when kids start to get neurotonal chiropractic adjustments that decrease sympathetic tone and activate the vagus nerve? Number one, you balance the microbiome. When you improve vagal nerve tone, you rebuild the gut terrain. You reconnect the gut-brain connection, and you absolutely get the gut on its own, without diet changes, without detoxes, without binders, without thousands of dollars of supplements. It helps regulate the overgrowth naturally. Once you turn the nervous system back on, it goes, whoa, what happened here? Let's clean this up. So the nervous system can clean up the microbiome all on its own because it's that smart, it's that brilliant, once you get it connected and you get rid of subluxation and sympathetic dominance. Number two, when your child starts to get adjusted in the right way, neurologically focused way, the right care plan, the right adjustments, it will reduce gut inflammation because you activate that vagus nerve, and it's actually the off switch to inflammation. And so it literally, we could do a whole podcast about the neuro-gut inflammatory cascade, neuro-gut immune cortex, actually the NEI super system, neuroendocrine, because it uses the endocrine system to really communicate here. But adjustments that activate the vagus nerve shut down inflammation and really start to get those pathways to not be so stuck on that vicious cycle. Number three, it improves that digestive motility and nutrient absorption. You need both. You need to get the bad stuff out and you need to get the good stuff in. The number one thing we celebrate most often in our practice is poop. We can absolutely, remember we talked about all those parents, they want to improve gut function. That's just a nice fancy way of saying my kid doesn't poop. We're putting thousands of dollars of supplements into their system and they still can't poop. And that's what parents tell us all the time, which is why I was so excited to do this episode. So you get your kiddo adjusted, that digestive motility increases, which also means the brain-gut connection is working better, so there's better nutrient absorption. And that improved digestive motility gets to number four. Chiropractic care absolutely serves as the most potent natural detoxer. The kids literally detox. So often, constipated kids under chiropractic care will actually go into diarrhea for a season. They will actually start to produce mucus and start to hack things up and sneeze. I was just talking about this in clinic this morning. This new beautiful baby that we take care of. I love you, Winslow. You're healing like crazy, coming out of all these neurological challenges, seizures, and everything else. She's now pooping on the regular. Her poops are real weird, meaning they're detoxing. The bad bacteria and the bad guys are getting out. And that also means it's leaving room for the good guys to get in. And she, quote unquote, is getting sick. No, she's not. She's getting healthy because you get sick to get healthy. And so that's number five. It just improves elimination. It restores motility. And so kids can just poop, the tone, the rhythm, the efficiency, the effectiveness of pooping. If there is three things that are absolutely essential to health, and your child getting healthy again if they've lost it, it's moving the body, so the sensory motor system, but movement on the inside is called pooping. So that's number 2, just digestive motility. And number 3 is sleeping. Guess what are the top 3 reports parents report with neurologically focused chiropractic care 80% of the time within the first 30 days of getting their child adjusted? They sleep better, they poop better, they move better. They sleep better, they poop better, they move better. What could be more transformative, more effective, and foundational to healing than that? We are the biggest fans of functional, integrated biomedical care. There is so many kiddos who the toxins are going to be so shoved into those tissues. The body is going to become so messed up that once we get them pooping, once we get them moving, once we get them sleeping and their sensory system better through neurologically focused chiropractic care, we're going to need to add some supplements to rebuild. We're going to need to add some enzymes and nutrients and probiotics and stuff to rebuild. We're going to need to add some binders, hopefully as light and as easy as can be, instead of heavy with all the risks of side effects and regression, and we're going to get those bad things out of the body. But the majority of our patients do it pretty much entirely on their own once we get the nervous system fully restored and back to function, because there's no better detoxer, gut-brain reconnector, gut immune system modulator, and just overall gut health rebuilder than the vagus nerve and the nervous system. If you've tried everything to get your child's gut, their gut-brain connection, their gut immune and inflammatory cascade back in order, and you've tried every diet change and every detox and every supplement and everything, we actually are just releasing another episode about kind of the flow pathways and homotoxicology. Mary Coyle, brilliant. You gotta get into that. You've gotta get the body, the neuro-gut moving. Movement is life. Pooping is life, and it's a foundational subluxation vagus nerve dysfunction issue. So if your child's not yet getting adjusted, get to pxdocs.com, find a neurologically focused chiropractor who can dig deep into the gut and into these labs and into these biomedical tests with you, and then also dig even deeper, because there is a deeper story to gut dysbiosis and microbiome and the findings on those labs. I ran them myself in the clinic, and they got better with chiropractic alone. Now they get best with chiropractic and functional medicine and nutrition and a healthy lifestyle. Obviously, the best answer is all the things in aggregate, but in a specific order. All of those supplements, all those binders, all those detoxers, there's not going to get in and do their job if your child is subluxated and dysregulated, because guess what even the good stuff needs to do? Get moved along, get absorbed, get assimilated, and be able to do its thing. So as is often said in that world, if you don't have this foundational issue fixed first, your child's going to have the most expensive urine in the world, because all of it's just going to make its way right back out the body. And if your child can't poop and they don't have this foundational gastrointestinal motility, that'll be the biggest issue as well. And if you're already getting your kiddo adjusted, and you're waiting for these changes to kick in, stay the course. A lot of times this vagus nerve dysfunction and this subluxation and this perfect storm, sympathetic dominance, it's deep within the system. So it can take a lot of adjustments over often many weeks and many months to kick this back into gear. So your child's healing has a lot to do with the gut, but it doesn't start in the gut. It starts in the brain, the nervous system, and the brain-gut connection first. It starts with the vagus nerve, it starts with the nervous system, then it goes into the sensory motor system, then it goes into the gut and the immune system. So start with the nervous system, stay with the nervous system, and go all in there to get the most transformative healing for your child ever. It works. It takes time. It takes the right chiropractor. That's why we always strongly recommend you go to a PX doc, you get the scans, you get a right care plan, you get the neurotonal adjustments, because the details really matter here clinically to get these changes to happen in our tough, chronic, perfect storm, neurosensory type cases. But when you do the work with this depth and this much completeness, goodness gracious, you absolutely positively can expect to experience miracles. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. Do you have a question that you would like to submit? Either send it to support@pxdocs.com with the subject Ask Dr. Tony, or head on over to our socials at PX Docs, where you can submit your question in our stories every single week. Every kid counts and every family counts, so let's leave no questions left unanswered. If you loved this episode and you want to help us reach more kids, we would so appreciate if you left a review and a rating on your favorite platform. God bless. Be well. We'll see you on the next one.